Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to GunLab. I'm Ian, and we just picked up a brand new rifle here. We're all excited. We took it completely apart and we put it back together for you. And figured we have to grab the camera right now and just show this to you guys because it's different. This is a Vulcan V15, sort of. Anyone who recognizes the name Vulcan may be wondering why the hell did we buy anything made by Vulcan? And you'd be correct. In fact, we bought this for two reasons. This particular rifle we think is a really good idea, very poorly executed, and it simply serves as an excellent example of how not to build guns. And it really is valuable to take a look at something that's really poorly done once in a while, just as an example. So, when I said this was sort of a V15, Vulcan made an AR-15 clone for a while, a shitty one. And this uses an AR-15 or V15 lower receiver. However, it's no longer an AR-15. They didn't even bother to change the model number on it. So what this actually is a combination of an AR-15 lower receiver and a copy of an AR-18 upper receiver. And we think that right there is the really good idea. The AR-18 was designed to be particularly easy and cheap to manufacture. It's extremely reliable, and frankly this is the basis for a lot of the modern, the military rifles that are currently being adopted, such as the German G36, which is basically this, just in plastic. So anyway, we'll get into why this is such a good platform in a minute. But for the moment, let's take a look at why this is such a crappy example of a rifle. We'll start at the muzzle and just work our way down. First off, the gas block. If you look at the front, you can see there's a little set screw in it. That is because rather than drill the gas port from the bottom and drill it up and figure out where you have to stop and have an intersecting hole from there, they just drilled the thing straight through and ran a set screw into the front to seal it off. And who knows if that's actually got any sort of thread locker in it or not. My guess would be probably not. To locate the gas block, typically one would use a cross pin drilled through the barrel. Okay, can you see that? Instead, here we have two set screws that are simply putting tension on the gas block. It's solid up here, and it's cut down here, and they just slide it over and then clamp it down with tension. So there's nothing actually positively holding this in place. When we get to the handguards, first of all, let's take a look at this, the handguards and the stock. They may look familiar. That would be because these are both pieces of furniture off an FNFAL, or rather off of Vulcan / Hesse's incredibly shitty version of the FAL. The handguards still have cutouts for the bipod that isn't on this rifle. They clearly had a bunch of leftover furniture when basically their reputation finally got out and they weren't able to sell anyone a FAL anymore, and they just recycled it here. The screw, you can see it doesn't fit, for one. We've got some nice gaps there. The screw that they used was too long, and their solution to that, this is how it came from the dealer. Their solution was simply to cover the extended bit of the screw with another nut, even though the handguard is threaded. A little bit cheesy there, you know, you think maybe you could just buy a shorter screw, maybe? Right.
Probably for a set screw so it doesn't back out.
Yeah, that's possible.
It's a lock washer type of thing, yeah.
They probably knew that the crappy hardware they use will strip out at some point. Alright, when we take the furniture off, first of all, one other point on this furniture, you can see this socket screw here. That does nothing except support the top of the handguard, because nothing else does. Alright, gas piston. This is an integral component of the AR-180 system, and it's a 3-part gas piston. You can see we have 3 different components there. That is so that when it's cycling, it won't disassemble itself. This is supposed to come all the way down, but when we want to take it apart, we can do so. However, This is the top part of the gas piston. This is supposed to be moving up and down every time the rifle fires. And again, brand new rifle, straight out of the box, that is completely seized up on its guide rod. Whether it's rusted in there because they didn't refinish the inside, or someone, for some reason, put some sort of epoxy or something in there, I have no idea. The first time you try and fire this rifle, it might do nothing and simply only function as a single shot straight pull. I suppose it might actually break it free the first time there's gas pressure in it and start it functioning, or who knows, maybe it just explode. So yeah, that's a big mark against a rifle right there. When straight from the factory, it will not function. Going a little farther down, our handguard retainer. You might think this screw holds the handguard retainer onto the receiver. You would be wrong. There is in fact nothing holding the handguard onto the receiver except the front end of the two guide rods. Alright, continuing on. Typically, on a rifle like this, or any decently made rifle, your barrel would either be threaded in place, or it would be pressed and then cross-pinned to hold it in. These guys decided not to do that. They just put a crappy-looking weld permanently mounting the barrel onto the trunnion. So you'd better hope that your headspace is right, because you're never changing it. Let's see, where else do we go from here? You'll notice there is an extra hole in the trunnion. The reason for that is that Vulcan didn't even bother to make trunnions. They simply bought extra trunnions and bolts and bolt carriers, which we'll get to in a minute, from Armalite. To disassemble this catastrophe of a rifle, typically on an AR-180, you'll have a tab coming up here that you can push forward, and that sets the recoil spring back and allows you to swing down the lower. In this case, that obviously would take way too much time and money to do. So instead, we just have two holes kind of drilled here in the plastic, and you have to stuff something like a screwdriver in there to get them open. So we're going to push that in. This is so well done that, there we go. This actually appears to be a fairly well-made part, and the reason for that is Vulcan didn't make it. We're pretty sure that Armalite did, and Vulcan simply bought it. Before I pull the bolt out, take a look and notice that that cocking handle is pointing downwards. That's backwards. That's also how it came brand new. If it were done correctly, like an AR-180, it would be pointing upwards like this, so that you can more easily cock the rifle from over the top. But it's not. They put it in upside down because they clearly don't know or don't care. Our bolt, anyone who's taken a look at an AR-15 will recognize this bolt. It is basically the exact same principle, the exact same design as an AR-15 bolt. The difference is, instead of being direct gas impingement, this is gas piston operated and runs on these two guide rods, like so. This is an excellent idea. We really like the AR-180, the AR-18 design. And this works really well. In practice here, that's because Vulcan didn't make these. If you look at the back of the bolt, you can see that there's been a section milled out and not refinished, because of course that would cost another extra 50 cents to do. The reason that this is milled out is because the AR-15 hammer that they used is wider than the AR-18 hammer, and they needed to use this larger firing pin and widen the back of the bolt. And of course they didn't bother to refinish it after they did that. Alright, upper receiver. This would be hard for anyone to screw up, even Vulcan. I'm sure they could, but this appears to be actually functional. The upper receiver on an AR-18 is a flat piece of steel, basically folded into a box and welded along the bottom. That's how it's supposed to be done.
Except they forgot the dust cover on this one.
Right. Yeah, real AR-18 has a dust cover on it to keep gunk out. That's another, $3 part that we can't bother to put onto this. They put Picatinny rails on it in lieu of any sights. You'll notice these are not machined into the receiver because the receiver is a flat piece of stamped. Instead, they're attached with a couple of screws and hex nuts. It's also worth pointing out that the front sight rail and the rear sight rail are not, in fact, parallel with each other. The front sight is canted off to one side. Good luck zeroing this thing. Now, taking a look at the receiver, the lower receiver rather, we have what is actually a standard AR-15 lower, or Vulcan's version of a standard AR-15 lower. They took what was normally the mount for the recoil buffer and milled that off flat. You can still see a little bit of the threading here for it at the bottom. And replaced it with a plastic block holding on one of their really crappy plastic foul stocks. In addition, if we take a look at this put together, you can see that the upper receiver is significantly wider than an AR-15 upper receiver would be. So that caused an extra problem of the bolt release no longer fits because this is too wide. So the fix is to, let's rotate that in here so you can see it.
Nope.
The fix is to mill off the bolt release. You can see there's a nice wide gap between the upper and the lower. That's always good. I suppose technically that's not necessarily a problem if that's the way the design is done. In this case, that's just a complete apathy on the part of the manufacturer. And of course it gives you a nice big opening for gunk to get into the gun. The AR-15 has 2 pins for attaching the upper receiver. They go ahead and use this one. The rear pin is not used. They didn't bother to redo the receiver to fill in the hole. They just took out the captive bit of the pin and stuffed a pin in there as a placeholder. Real classy there. What else do we have here? If we take a look at the bottom of the stock, you can see we have the buttstock attached by a top quality, what appears to be drywall screw. Another real good move there because, you know, save 2 extra cents wherever you can, I guess.
It's a high quality drywall screw.
Yeah, I'm sure. So, I really would...
Let's talk about this section here, which is just adapted.
Yeah, that's a good point. So we milled off, I shouldn't say we, Vulcan milled off the back of this receiver, got rid of the recoil buffer housing, and they have an FAL buttstock. The FAL buttstock and the AR-15 do not meet up, obviously, so they have an intermediate piece to adapt one to the other. The stock is held into this block, of course, by this drywall screw. The block is held in underneath the stock with some sort of screw or bolt that you can see right down here inside. So the block is screwed on, and you know, I bet that's just a coarse thread wood screw, basically, holding this block into the receiver, and then you put on the buttstock and screw it in from the bottom. You don't want to, if you make the terrible, terrible mistake of buying one of these rifles yourself unknowingly, I would not recommend taking this apart very often because you'll strip those screws out pretty fast, and then it's hopeless. Not that it's got all that much hope to begin with. This whole thing flexes quite a bit if you put any pressure on it. So
basically what I'm understanding with what you're saying is that they took what was a really good design and turned it into shit.
Yep, pretty much.
Okay.
As I said at the beginning, we really like this idea of the AR-18 upper. It's simple, it's cost-effective, there's a lot going for it. But this is totally an example of how not to do it. I hope you guys enjoyed taking a look at this. I hope none of you make the mistake of going out and buying one of these unless you do it like we do as an example of something not to do. And yeah, I wouldn't buy anything made by Vulcan or Hess or any of the other names that this company takes on when people realize they're horrible, horrible products. So, anything else we need to add? Anything I overlooked?
No, it's a shame because it's a good design. It's a good concept. It allows use of, and they just did it badly. Yeah. How not to make a rifle.
So badly. Well, thanks for watching, guys.